As you can see, I have colored her in pretty dramatically here. And what we're going to do now is move on to the next phase, which is to paint highlights and shadows. I've already relabeled this as flat color, and I've locked this layer so we don't accidentally paint on this. What I want to do is to select this area, so I isolate this, because we're going to paint light and shadow, but I don't want to paint on the background at all, or other things that don't really need to get painted. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to go to the magic wand. Sample all layers is on here, which means that this new layer that I'm creating now, which I'll call highlights, shadows, basically if I try to isolate any color here, well, there's nothing on this layer. But if I sample all the layers, I can see what's here. Now I'm going to temporarily turn off the layer there. Okay, good. So that's all our line art that I just turned off. I'll turn it back on. And now I will use the paintbrush. I'm going to reduce the opacity pretty dramatically down here. That's a little too far. So around about 15 or 16% with a bigger brush, bracket keys here. And I've also got to set my brush to be soft. Okay, and now I think I'm ready to paint. And you'll see that this is creating kind of a shadow across her hindquarters and the back of her leg, because I'm presuming that the light source in this room is coming from the top of the room, maybe some sort of chandelier or something. So I'm making this progressively darker, and I'll even cut across her leg a little bit more, that the leg is creating more of a shadow. Okay, that's pretty much it. I mean, that's the basic process, is we're telling Photoshop where the shadows and the light are. Now, the other thing here is I've chosen as my background, now I just switched to foreground, my foreground color is a warm color, because I presume that in the Old West, where this is ostensibly placed, that they didn't have bright lights. They had kerosene lamps and they had candles, perhaps. So it would be a very warm light. So now when I paint across the top of her leg, it gets a bit of a warm light. And that's pretty cool. Maybe I'll even paint a little bit across her pants down here, just a little bit. There we go. And that's a start. Now what I've done here is I've just isolated her pants. Now what you might want to do is isolate her entire body at one time, just to make life a little easier for if you're trying to do it all at once. So I'll try to do that as well. So first of all, I'm going to turn off my highlight here, and I'm going to continue using the magic wand to select other things. So of course I'll hold down the shift key and grab that part, and I'll grab this boot part, and her glove, and her, I don't know what those are, little things on her shirt, her top, her midriff, her breast, her face area, and maybe her hat. There's actually several colors of her hat there. And maybe her lips, I don't know. It's basically any color that I've had there before. And I think that's pretty good. I'm going to zoom out to make sure I didn't accidentally select everything else. Okay. And I'll zoom in a little bit more. There we go. And just to see where I am, I'll turn on the line art. Now, just for giggle's sake, I'm going to turn off this original highlights and shadows, so you can still see I still have everything flatted and it hasn't been interfered with. I'll paint on a new layer to do this. Okay, now, so we'll do the shadow layer, and I'll get my brush tool. My brush tool is set to be a low opacity, so it goes on nice and smooth. And here, now notice that I'm painting outside. That's because I want the soft edge of the brush to kind of gently add some value here. So I'm going over this several times. And also grabbing the, you can see that her skin is kind of filling in there. But I'll paint across this whole area. I don't know, it feels a little bit more consistent, don't you think? There we go. A little bit across there, across the front of her leg. And that's looking pretty good. I might make my brush a little bit smaller here as I approach her back. And this arm down here. Good. A little bit smaller here across her shoulder, right over, it's really under the hair. A little bit bigger, and I'm going to try to get the back of her face where the hair is being covered here. Maybe a little bit across her forehead. Okay, and she does have large breasts, so I'm actually going to kind of see if I can make those breasts kind of shadow themselves just a little bit. Still trying to make that area kind of round. Okay, we're in good place. We may put some shadow on this hat back here. Now to do this, I'm going to try to stay away from her shirt. A little bit bigger brush. The bigger brush allows me to make a nice softer transition here. So I'm kind of trying to lay this down like that. Again, I'm trying to not hit the shoulder that much. And that's not bad. I'll go with that. So I've pretty much done all the shadows, and now I will do the highlights. And again, low opacity on the brush, and just cut across the top here. Make that area warm. We might not see much of a transition on her belly because those tonal values are pretty close anyway, but we might pick up a little bit there. And then across her breast top a little bit, we'll highlight that. And a little bit across her shoulder here. And again, I'm trying to avoid the hat, so I'm going to try to see if I can kind of paint that in over here, just to kind of warm it up a little bit and give her that sense of roundness across the shoulders. Okay, and a little bit of, actually, you know what I'm going to do is, well, I can't do this right now because I'm only focused on her face, but this, her hair is dark and there's clearly, you know, light top there, which means that that's really the specular highlight created by shiny hair. So I'll do that in a moment, and I'll use basically my same highlight that I've done here. But I want a little bit across her forehead and maybe a little bit across her nose. Just a little bit of warmth there. Okay, I'm going to turn off my marching ants, and let's zoom out a little bit. Actually, zoom out fully. So there's the entire light and dark just on her. There's the flat value. There's the light and dark. And we'll finish up with the hair. So this time I've turned already the marching ants off, and I'll just paint in this. I have to turn my brush up this time. And I believe I'm going to do a harder brush. So I'm going to shift and right bracket 4 times. There we go. And I think I actually want to make this value a little bit higher, a little bit brighter. That's not bad. And of course my brush has to get smaller to work in some of these intricate areas here. Now the good news is I think that if I'm not crazy about the highlight across her hair, I can isolate that and change that value if I were so inclined. We'll see how that works. I think we're almost done. A little bit more up here. Oops, gotta hit the right keyboard combination, otherwise this doesn't work. And Okay. Oops. Okay, that doesn't look bad. Just for giggles. Let me turn off my line art. Okay, interesting. I think I might want to try to... This might not work. Let's see what happens. Let's say that I go to my magic wand and I get her hair. Did a pretty good job, but it's also starting to pick up some of this other light value. Let me turn down the tolerance and see if this might work. Let's drop this down to about 10 and pick that again. That did a much better job of isolating her hair. Now, I'm going to show you something that has absolutely nothing to do with what we've been doing in class, but you might want to be aware of this. We can change, this is one of my favorite tools, by the way, hue and saturation. Okay, so basically what I've done is I selected her hair, and then it put a layer mask with a new layer. This is called an adjustment layer, and I can change the value. So let's say that I want to brighten the lightness of the hair. I just crank this over a little bit. And I even think I like this a little bit better. Notice how that it's getting more contrast from her face. Let's see if we want to try a different saturation value. So this actually weakens the value, which turns it more gray. If I go to the right, that makes it a little bit more intense. I think I'm not done yet. I think I'm going to lean a little bit more towards yellow. Now, the hue here is misleading because you think I'm actually like in the blue-green or cyan area here. This is really just a relative thing. I have to play around with this. If I want to lean more towards a yellow, that is definitely not the way to go. But if I go the right way, okay, there we go. More of a yellowy kind of a thing. For lighter highlights, let's say I want to reduce the saturation there. So it gets, again, approaching kind of a gray, right about there. And I kind of like that. So it's lighter, it's more warm. Let's see, let's turn this off. So here's the original color that I did, which is more orangey, more maybe even towards red. This is more of a, I mean, if you think about specular highlights off of hair, especially dark hair like that, you can get some very neutral values and very bright values. So that's kind of a fun place to take that. Okay, and just for giggles, I will also bring these two layers together. This is called merge down. So I just flattened that color into that particular layer. And you can see the highlights and shadows work that way. So as you're already aware, the whole project now is to take your flatted values and to do highlights and shadows across everything. Good luck.